Good evening, Bahamas. Coming up tonight.
Our news taking a look at what is just a wasteland in the mud at Abaco.
Teachers back in court today over disputes at 2 schools.
Our news is brought to you by Alive.
Welcome to Our News and thanks for joining us. I'm Kyle Joaquin. Though the death toll from Hurricane Dorian continues to climb at a painfully slow pace, one of the companies tasked with cleaning up the mud shantytown in Abaco says it has already come across the dead bodies of storm victims. Just over 2 months since Dorian pulverized the Abacos, recovery has been slow. Jared Higgs visited Abaco today and filed this report.
Now, of course, here in the mud shantytown in Abaco, it's an absolute wasteland 2 months post-Hurricane Dorian. There's a building prohibition in place, and that can be renewed every 6 months. Now, if you take a look over, you can see tractors at work. They belong to Bahama Striping. They're one of the companies mandated to clean up the shantytown. If we take a look over, we can see the foundations of homes. There's nothing left. There are no walls. It's just the tile on the floor. And of course, there is any fixture that you would find in a house. You have fans, you have sinks, you have toilets, and of course, you've got plumbing. Now, what may be the most disturbing thing about being in this shantytown, and it may explain why they gave us these masks, is the smell. It's either decaying flesh or it's sewerage. Now, of course, those officials from Bahama Striping have told us that they've been mandated to go through this community cleaning up slowly in case they find any more bodies. Bahama Striping Managing Director Dr. Alan Albury says the storm's death toll will likely rise as cleanup crews sort through the rubble.
We have to be mindful that there were probably some discoveries of human remains, and we wanted to make sure that they were being handled with dignity. We've had several discoveries since we've been here.
Hurricane Dorian's Category 5 devastation is still obvious as you drive through Marsh Harbor. Most, if not all, homes have tarp on their roofs. Piles of rubble still line the street, and the majority of businesses remain shut. The most active area by far is the mud, where crews work slowly to clear the area.
That is not fair. That's not fair.
That's how a displaced Haitian man staying in a home just outside the mud's perimeter described the treatment of Haitians in Dorian's aftermath. The 47-year-old, who says he has worked as a carpenter in Abaco for 25 years, is pleading with government not to forget the area's longtime residents.
For me, I have my uncle and my sister live for almost 40 years on the mud, you see. Right now, y'all don't have no place to live. I think the government's supposed to do something for y'all, you see, because y'all pay work permit, y'all pay insurance, you see, everything's y'all have. This week, you spend the money right there. Right now, I don't have no choice, you see. Nothing happen now.
Still, the man accepts that government's stop order on building in Abaco shantytowns is difficult to challenge.
Government don't want nobody build in the mud, so I don't have no choice because I don't have no place to live, you see. That's I can't change the law. That's a law, you see. If you say no, I have to agree with that, you see.
Thousands of Abaco residents have been displaced by the storm. Some are staying with family in New Providence, while others, typically non-nationals, are staying in shelters. The island's recovery is no doubt a mammoth task. Just yesterday, the central bank pegged Abaco's Hurricane Dorian losses at $2.5 billion. That's about 20% of the country's GDP. Reporting for Our News, I'm Jared Higgs.
Following the government's controversial decision last year to purchase the Grand Lucayan Resort in Grand Bahama for $65 million, Minister of Tourism and Aviation Dionisio D'Aguilar revealed today that the government is now considering purchasing the Grand Bahama International Airport for up to $40 million. Georgia Bain reports.
Grand Bahama International Airport is currently owned by Hutchinson Port Holdings. However, Tourism and Aviation Minister Dionisio D'Aguilar says the owners seem reluctant to rebuild the airport, which was ripped to shreds when Hurricane Dorian unleashed its fury on that island for 2 long days.
It's under consideration, and that's all I would be prepared to say right now. The Hutchinson Whampoa or Hutchinson Ports are the operator of that airport. They have not demonstrated an effort to rebuild that airport to where it was before. They seem somewhat reluctant. So the government is considering its options.
The airport experienced severe flooding, forcing Customs and Immigration to conduct clearance from a tented area. Temporary modular buildings were installed to house administration, flight operations, ticketing, baggage collection, and distribution. Diaghiler says purchasing the airport could cost the government between $30 and $40 million.
Once you buy it, the focus now shifts to the government of the Bahamas. So what are you going to do with it? And to rebuild that airport could cost $20, $30, $40 million. You have to figure out where that money is going to come from. You have to consider who the operator is going to be. You have to consider how that airport makes money. So before we spend the money of the people of the Bahamas, we have to consider all these things. And I don't think the government wants to be rushed into making that decision. We understand that it is critical to the economy of Grand Bahama. We're very sensitive to that. But we have to think through the purchase.
He added that the government is currently examining business models.
So the objective is to determine what is going to be the revenue source. How is it going to self-fund itself? And that is what we're looking at the business model. Obviously, we look to NAD, the model of the LPIA. Clearly, they have a lot more traffic than Grand Bahama, so we're trying to figure out what is the business model and how does it work. And you can't sort of make that decision right on the fly. You got to do a lot of research. You got to get all the financials. You got to consider all of those things. So, are we considering it? Yes, but we're working through all of the proposals and how we would make it work once we acquired it.
Reporting for our News, I'm Georgie O'Bain.
Attorneys for the government and Bahamas Union of Teachers are back in court today. The union is taking legal action over conditions at Carlton Francis Primary School and C.H. Reeves Junior High School. Jillian Gray reports.
Dozens of teachers gathered outside court as the attorneys for the government and the Bahamas Union of Teachers made their submissions before Justice Bernard Turner.
Solidarity forever! Solidarity forever!
Attorney for the Teachers Union, Khalil Parker, said he and the government's attorney, Franklin Williams, presented their applications for injunctions on several matters in closed chambers.
The union's application to have the government prevented from coding and cutting the teachers' salaries at Carlton Francis and C.H. Reeves, and the government has sought an order that the teachers be compelled to return to work. The applications were heard. His lordship is considering them, and he will deliver his ruling either Thursday or Tuesday next.
Teachers at C.H. Reeves have been sitting out of the classroom for several weeks, citing adverse working conditions and insufficient classroom space. Meanwhile, teachers at Carlton E. Francis have not returned to the classroom since protesting and petitioning the government to remove the principal at that school. The problem came to a head after teachers learned their pay had been cut. Education Minister Jeffrey Lloyd said he's glad the matter is now before the courts.
I'm not concerned about the fact that it's going to court. I want it to go to court because it needs to be resolved. I am deeply concerned, and I've said this repeatedly, I am most disappointed in the actions taken by some of our teachers. It is most unfair to our students. We have an industrial agreement. That agreement stipulates the process for dealing with grievances. Let's sit down and let's resolve our differences, whatever they may be.
Nonetheless, the minister expressed his disgust with the actions of teachers and added teachers' actions have placed students at a disadvantage.
This action, this strategy is exercised far too often. It is not fair. If we have a problem, and there will be problems, let's sit down. For God's sakes, we are reasonable people. They are reasonable people. What is the issue? How can we resolve it? Let's come to a place of resolution instead of always seeking to have to be fighting and I can take you to court and so on. Who does that benefit? And we are here for the children of the Bahamas. We just finished talking about being globally competitive. How are you going to be globally competitive if you're out of the classroom?
However, BUT President Belinda Wilson made it clear today they are not backing down.
Well, I'm happy that we had an opportunity for justice for our teachers, and we look forward to the ruling.
Reporting for our News, I'm Jillian Gray.
The Education Minister also responding to dismal national exam results. Compared to 2018, there was a decrease in the number of students who achieved a grade of C or above in math, English, and science during the 2019 BGCXE examinations. Lloyd said there is no cause for alarm.
We want to stop discounting the great effort of our teachers, the great effort of our administrators, parents, and our students in making them believe that because they achieved a D on their BGCSE or their BJC, that they are somehow a failure or they are failing or they are incompetent. Because look again, go and review the legend. The legend specifically and clearly states that if you have achieved a D, that you have competencies. Now, if you get an E or an F or a G, then yes, there's reason for concern. And that's not where we are as a country. We have much to be proud of in our educational establishment.
Lloyd added that a D grade is in the middle of the scale. Therefore, it should be expected that the majority of students will fall in that category. He said a D shows that a student is competent in a subject. He added that while the focus is on national exams, they're not the only factors that determine a student's ability.
This is just an assessment tool among many assessment tools. We also have to look at our graduation rates. And as I said earlier, our graduation rates in the last 2.5, 3 years has increased by 30%. It's gone from 46% nationally to now 60%. And we are doing phenomenally well, and it's going to get even better when the virtual school gets upon and really gets up and running.
Days after the Attorney General's office launched its bid to appeal the acquittal of former PLP Senator Frank Smith, the opposition is demanding a full breakdown of how much government has spent in legal fees on British Queen's Counsel over the past 2 years. They say taking the matter to the Privy Council in London is a further waste of time and money.
Attorney General, it is not good enough to say that the costs of the QCs are reasonable. Reasonable to whom?
Days after Smith's legal team was served with notice that the AG's office would take the matter to the Privy Council in the UK, the opposition is calling for a full breakdown of how much government has spent on legal fees since the beginning of what they've deemed a political witch hunt. In August, the Court of Appeal unanimously refused to order that Frank Smith be retried and dismissed the Crown's appeal, which it called unsustainable. Months later, it's on to London, but at what cost to Bahamian taxpayers?
This matter is a public law matter, and the government is paying for this witch hunt, having hired 3 different QC lawyers out of London. That third lawyer, Peter Knox, follows the 2 other highly paid English QCs, Jenkins and Guthrie, in that order.
Attorney General Carl Bethel has outright refused to say how much government paid British Queen's Counsel Edward Jenkins to lead the prosecution, only saying it was at minimum costs. Costs were extremely reasonable. They were not anywhere near the $1.2 million the PLP paid for mere legal advice in the Bahama matter.
We don't think that's a private matter. They're spending public monies and what we call a witch hunt. We don't call it a prosecution, we call it a persecution. And I think if they're using our money to pursue what we call victor's justice, they should let us know what that amount is.
Smith was accused of abusing his power as chairman of the Public Hospitals Authority by demanding and receiving bribes from cleaning company owner Barbara Hanna over a 2016 contract to clean the critical care block at PMH. He was acquitted by Chief Magistrate Joy Ann Ferguson Pratt in February. Considering 2 courts didn't see the need to pursue the matter, Davis said it appears as though government's latest attempt is strictly political.
This, on the contrary, is everything to do with politics and the vendetta that the FNM has against the PLP. It is a political campaign driven by victor's justice and paid for by the taxpayers.
Still to come, just how much will it cost to renovate the Rand Memorial Hospital? Plus, government accused of treating Dorian victims like debris. Stay tuned.